Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Well, welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley. Today we have an amazing guest coming on, but before we get her introduced, I would like to share that we are now being broadcast and subscribed to on 6 continents, and as of Sunday, we have been informed that we are the top 25% in the world for downloads on podcasts. So I want to thank all of my amazing and inspiring guests, as well as all of you Bamboo Pack members. All I do is allow a platform and ask questions. You do all the rest. You carry the heavy load, so I thank you all so very, very much. In fact, one beautiful heart letter we received over the past 2 weeks from one of the Bamboo Pack members, she said to me, "I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast daily now. These have made such a huge inspiration, and I'm so thankful to have you and the Bamboo Lab in my life." So thank you, Bamboo Pack member. We're so appreciative of you and all of you. All right, let's get rolling today. Okay, so folks, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably going to stumble through this guest bio because it's so extensive. And it's lingo I don't really understand because it's way above my pay grade. So today we have a person who's been a friend of mine for several years. We've had some beautiful conversations on politics and life and family and philosophy. We have Lisa Enos. Lisa is an award-winning director out of the state of Michigan. She spent several years producing documentaries for A&E, and she flipped over, went to LA, and actually became an incredible producer, an actor, and co-writer. One of her films that starred Peter Weller and herself, as well as Danny Huston, is called Ivansxtc. We're going to have a link to that on here today. She has done some extensive work in Hollywood and has rubbed elbows with some of the most famous people in the world in that industry. And over the past few years, she found herself coming back home to the state of Michigan and currently resides in Grand Rapids, Michigan as the editor of an amazing, well-done magazine called Grand Rapids Magazine. So without further ado, Lisa Enos, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Hi, Brian, and thank you for having me on.
You are more than welcome. It's my honor. And folks out there in the Bamboo Pack, if you hear any barking in the background, it's probably going to be Arthur, and that is Lisa's 90-pound red lab. He's a little bit, I think, stuck to his mom quite a bit, so mom's not giving him her attention, so he might be barking or slobbering in the background. So as you all know, you love the authenticity of our podcast, and we might hear a little bit of Arthur today. We hope we do. All right. So Lisa, as I said to the Bamboo Pack, you and I have had some great conversations face to face. We've gone out to dinner at our friend Steve's house, and I've gotten to know you really well over the years, but the Bamboo Pack hasn't. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your childhood, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, I am from rural Michigan. I grew up on 40 acres in the middle of kind of nowhere. About 4 miles due east of Lake Michigan. I'm an all-seasons girl. I love it all, especially the summer. But yeah, I grew up in rural Michigan. I went away to Michigan State University, the only college that I applied to. My dad had gone there. My older brother had gone there. And right after college, I moved to Chicago and started working at a very small boutique production company. From there, I didn't stay there for very long. I guess we got a contract, and me and one of the other producers headed out to Portland, Oregon, and lived there for 3.5 years. And I went to LA after that, and I ping-ponged around a bit, moved to England. I lived in London for 2 years. Lived in Romania for a little while, came back to LA. I mean, it's just been a wild ride.
That's a journey right there. Well, I didn't realize you lived in London and Romania. I don't think that ever came out in our conversations.
Huh. Well, you learn something new every day, Brian.
Every day. It could have been a couple of gin and tonics or a couple of beers I had when you told me the story too. So it could be my fault. My memory sometimes fades me. What's so funny,
We
Lisa?
might have never gotten to it.
Maybe not. All. Yeah, we stuck a lot on politics and or family and philosophy and things of that nature. What's so interesting is when you said I grew up in a rural area, I'm exasperated. What am I? I'll just say I'm surprised by how many of my guests who have done amazing things in their lives are from a small community. I would say 90% of the guests I've had on have said that. Maybe not that many, but it's well over half. That's for sure. And maybe that's just because small communities do tend to breed very durable, driven people.
Well, I think when you're in a large community, there's a lot more competition. There's a pecking order that's already kind of laid out. And so, people tend not to kind of, they don't excel or decel, if that's even a word, out of their strata. It's like, they kind of like stay in their box, stay in their lane, so to speak, but, or so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in a small town, anybody, if you're good at something, people know it. It's in the newspaper, or it's, you're able to kind of shine. And I think that might have something to do with it, because once you're being acknowledged for whatever your talent is, that builds confidence. Mm-hmm. And, maybe that's a reason that people from smaller communities tend to excel in the big world. They get their confidence built up very quickly by having, a community that acknowledges them.
That's a really good point. You get your name in the small town paper, or you're on the local news, or I think that happens with a lot of high school athletes. They really get the praise in grocery stores or restaurants when they go in. And I think that does build their confidence to a point, I guess. I think sometimes when you go on with something and continue like you did with your life and taking those small town wins and making them bigger wins throughout the world, I think that's great. But so many people live in the glory days and never leave their hometown. And all of a sudden they're still 18 years old when they're 55 years old. And they're still living that high school, that home run that they ran, or that winning touchdown that they scored. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. It's a good question though, because I think there's also a challenge to be unique or different in a small community, because in a bigger city, you can kind of be yourself. You can you can go for your goals. You can be, in dance instead of sports, or you can go in a different direction, and you may not get ostracized as much or pinned down into a certain category. Where in a small town, if you're a 17-year-old man or a young man and you go out for ballet, you're probably going to get ostracized a little more because you stand out. So maybe there's an opportunity when you do something well, like you said, you get the acknowledgement, which builds confidence. But also, if you continue to push through some ostracization and getting teased or picked on, you build grit and you build confidence, or you build strength and a really tough skin that carries you forward too. So I don't know what the secret is, but I'm glad I grew up in a small community, and I'm glad you did too.
Yeah, I love it. I loved it so much that I took my kids back there to raise them. I mean, raising children in LA was just not an option. It just wasn't an option. I would have had to have lived in a small apartment because everything costs so much there. They just wouldn't have had that small town kind of experience, which is great. When kids are little, I don't know. I wanted them to be able to do the things that I did. I wanted them to go play in Lake Michigan, learn to water ski, learn to snow ski, do all these things that you can do outside. And my daughter had a horse when she was little, all that kind of stuff. We had chickens. I became an urban chicken farmer for a while. Urban, or I guess, small town urban chicken farmer. We just did all the things. My kids were in 4-H. I don't know. I just wanted to build that. I wanted them to have those building blocks, as they kind of went out into the world. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I think there's such a value that, of course, my daughter Ashley was raised in my hometown, and Dawson was raised in East Grand Rapids, which obviously is part of Grand Rapids, but it's such a small tight-knit community. It's almost like a small town within a city. So I think he got some of that experience where you get up in the morning, get on your bike and go. It didn't have to worry about traffic or crime or anything of that nature. But a question for you, Lisa, is obviously I don't talk to a lot of people, and I'm assuming most of the Bamboo Pack members don't talk to a lot of people who spent a long period of their life in LA and Hollywood and, produced movies, co-wrote movies and films and documentaries and starred in some and rubbed elbows with some of the biggest stars. So your life took a different twist, in a different direction than an average person. And obviously this podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and you are the perfect candidate for that. So what was what was an inspiration for you to take that direction in your life?
It's kind of strange. It's I would say that my father definitely is the one who introduced me to movies and to quality television. I don't really watch television anymore. I'm kind of like a little bit of Netflix here and there, but I don't even have a terrestrial television or cable or whatever. I don't watch that anymore. But when I was growing up in the 70s, there was a lot of quality television on. I mean, MASH, Barney Miller, like Lou Grant, all these shows that had real kind of like good messages to them, all in the family. And my dad was kind of into television and into movies. And, we'd spend Sunday afternoons watching whatever long, boring, Bridge Over the River Kwai movie was on. I don't know, but the Masterpiece Theater, that kind of thing. And that was my quality time with my dad, is sitting there and I'm watching quality television.
You forgot Columbo.
I never watched Columbo.
Oh my goodness, that was one of my favorites. I mean, I was really young when it was on, but I've gone back and watched a lot of episodes. I really think it was an incredible movie.
Oh,
or
yeah.
TV show, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the series. Beretta, remember that?
I remember Beretta. And that was with who now? What was his name?
I don't know. Was that James Garner? No, that was Rockford Files.
That was Rockford Files. Oh, I forget the name of the guy, but he was a kind of he was a badass.
I don't know. I was like 5.
Yeah.
My dad was a salesman, and he was actually worked for a commercial fertilizer company, and so he was gone until like the evening. He was always home after dinner, like the plate of food was in the fridge for him or whatever. And I would always stay up and wait for my dad to get home, and we would sit there and watch TV. And the biggest joke in my family is I'd be like waking him up, like, wake up, Dad, you're supposed to be watching me. And it's terrible. I think I watched TV until the Star Spangled Banner came on every single night, even as like a little tot, and then the fuzz,
would just go white out.
The poltergeist, they're here fuzz would come on.
Oh, by the way,
and then I'd go to bed.
It's Robert Blake.
Yes.
Columbo or Beretta. I just Googled it.
Good for you.
So, okay, so your dad, well, that's great. I'm glad he steered you in that direction. I think the world is much better off because of that, obviously. And these experiences you have, I think it's so interesting. And when I've talked with you, I know that time we had dinner at the outside restaurant, and I forget the name of it. And I think your movie was just coming back out or was being released on DVD. And that was when I first realized, oh, my friend has actually did some really cool stuff in her life. Which I think. So I have a question for you. I know we've had conversations on this, but the last 2 or 3 years have been definitely a different type of time period for most of the at least the developed countries in the world. Obviously, with political upheaval, economic struggles, the pandemic and quarantine, and all the social media. What have been your greatest learnings or learning over the past couple of years?
Honestly, I learned how absolute, and not that I shouldn't have known this before, because obviously it shaped my opinion, but I've learned what a powerful tool, a propaganda tool that television is and has really become. Mm-hmm. And how it just people were rejecting their own eyes and ears in favor of what the television was telling them. And it kind of, it terrified me, actually.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, whenever you've been involved in actually creating content, you understand that the fallibility of that content. You understand that, like, this is not necessarily the be all end all. New facts come out every single day, or somebody else's story can be told that completely it might not negate what you've just put out, but it's actually should be considered supplemental. There's really no final word on anything, and I think we should all choose to trust our own eyes and ears as opposed to what some kind of voice of authority on a screen is telling us. I think that's pretty much over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic. I think that's become it's really become something that I actually I want to be the change I want to see in the world. So
I love that.
I'm now back in the news, and not that Grand Rapids Magazine is any kind of a hard news publication. It's not. It's a lifestyle magazine, but I want to tell the good stories, the happy stories. I want to get away from the doom and gloom. I think that we're at an incredible time on this planet, and we all just need to focus on the positive as opposed to all the negative. I mean, remember that Don Henley song, Dirty Laundry?
Mm-hmm.
Give us dirty laundry. Like, that sells. That's what sells. That's what gets people tuning into those 24-hour cable news networks is all the doom and gloom and the dirty laundry out there. And those people are there to entertain you and get ratings. And I can't stress that enough. I know people who are listening to podcasts these days probably aren't that audience. So I'm sure your bamboo pack doesn't fall into that category, but honestly, people, think for yourselves. I mean, that's my biggest takeaway from these last couple 3 years, I suppose.
I think and I couldn't agree with you more on that. One of the things I've noticed, Lisa, is so many people that I know, there were two factions during the quarantine. And of course, most people honored the quarantine, and because we didn't really know. But like you said, sometimes new facts come out. I always believe the second half of the truth oftentimes corrects the first half of the truth, but people don't hear the second half of the truth. One of the things I've noticed is the people who really locked themselves in for 18 to 24 months, and that's fine. But what they did with that time is so many people use it as productive times. They created great art. They worked on their body, their mind, their spirit. They spent more time with family. They did things that maybe they wouldn't have done because their lives were so busy on the outside. I think those people came through the quarantine a better person. But then there's that group of people who decided that, no, they're not going to do that. They're going to sit in front of the idiot box all day long and watch TV news 24/7, which is just a continuous loop of bad news, danger, danger, Will Robinson. And those people came out of the quarantine with an incredibly elevated mental health, a much greater elevation of their mental health challenges. I mean, they became much more cynical, much more depressed. Some people became, almost paranoid. It just seems like there was two factions of the world. And when I remember when it started, that when we were told schools are closed down, I brought Dawson down. I put on a whiteboard in my office the house I lived in over there, or Livingston, or on the other side of East Grand Rapids. I think you visited me there. And I put CIA, and I put control, influence, and accept. I said, okay, what are the things we have to accept? Schools closed. Gyms are closed. Restaurants are closed. Can't see your friends is like you were. I can't see my friends like I were. We put a list of things. Then I said, what things can we influence? I said, we can only influence other people through our actions. So I said, what are our actions that we can control? And we put down, we can read more. We can exercise more. We can spend more time together playing board games. We put a list of things we can control. And I said, we're only going to talk about the things we can control. We're not going to ever have conversations about the things we have to accept. And the things we influence, people are only other people. And we can do that just by the things we can control. I said, so this is what we're going to talk about and focus on. And that helped both of us have clarification during that time frame of, we're going to use this time to better ourselves. Now, I didn't do all the time. I drank more beer during that time because I was stuck home a lot more with a teenage kid who was driving me up the wall at times. So it wasn't all positive, but I think it was being able to look at what are the things that we can control during this time and really get really maniacally focused on those that separates people who did that. A lot of people did that. Those people came out stronger, were the people who worried about the things that had to accept, like the bad news, and they sat there and fraud on it, and they sat and watched the news over and over and over again. That little amygdala in their brain was just going danger, danger, and all it did was make them more paranoid. It's just so.
I was just going to say that the people had their amygdala hijacked daily. Every time they turned on, CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. I mean, I don't even want to say one side or the other was worse. Although I do have my own opinions about that, but honestly, it was all bad. It was all bad. I mean, it was just like anytime I walked. We all had our little pod of people that we visited during that time. And there were certain people who were glued to certain channels that I stopped being able to have conversations with them. Because what I was doing, which I've always done, because I'm a curious person and I just have that, as a journalist, I have that mindset where I'm just going to research. I'm going to look up what this person has to say. I'm going to look up what that person has to say. I'm going to actually look at statistics. And I kept the Kent County Michigan dashboard of COVID cases on my open on my computer at all times, and I would refresh it a few times a day just to make sure that my community wasn't, that there wasn't some kind of apocalypse I didn't know about, because I don't watch TV and I don't consume a lot of mainstream media, so I wanted to just make sure that I was aware. And what I was hearing from friends who didn't do that, who all they do is, get their daily dose of the news at 6 o'clock or whatever, is, how bad everything was and how, everybody was dying. And I'd be like, well, this isn't really true. I mean, this is how many cases that we have here, and this is how many people have died from it. I would, and it was like being looked at like I had two heads or something. They were just so sure what the people were selling on TV was the be-all, end-all. And, I mean, I've even had people say, well, you don't understand, this information is vetted. They vet what's on TV. And I'm like, honestly, I've made TV. They really don't do that much vetting. Honestly, they really don't. I mean, you saw one person after another make, total misstatement, misspeak, or actually completely... I don't want to call it a lie, but they were spreading the information that they thought was true. But you have to look at who advertises on those channels and go, of course, they're not going to say anything against that certain thing because that's where 50% of their advertising is coming from. So, without getting into specifics, I think you know what I'm talking about. I
do, for sure. And the interesting thing is the people who are giving you the information are the ones who are telling you that it's been vetted. It's like, yeah, of course, if I say I'm telling you the truth, I'm not going to turn around and say that it's a lie later on. I'm going to say, this is the truth. I promise you. I mean, that's just what they were saying. And we can go on this forever. I want to stop for a minute. I always want to recapture a couple things for the Bamboo Pack that you have said, Lisa. And I think Bamboo Pack, I want you to catch this one thing Lisa said at the beginning. And it was kind of she just said it nonchalantly. Acknowledgement from others of your talent builds confidence. I want you to think about a person in your life right now that might be struggling, that has a unique talent, a unique gift, because we all do. Maybe it's buried within them. Maybe it only shines on a rare occasion, but that person could use a little boost of confidence. It could be a son or a daughter or a friend or a parent. It could be anybody, if somebody you work with. It behooves us as a society to let those people know, let them know that you see and appreciate the talent and the unique gift that they bring to the world, because that little confidence, that little thing you say can be a turning point for that person. They could go on from there to always remember that gift you gave them, that one moment when you acknowledge their talent, that they can take off and do some amazing things for themselves, their loved ones, their community, maybe the entire world. I think that was a beautiful piece of advice. It was a diamond in the rough right there. And a couple other things I really liked is she wants to be the change that's needed in the world right now. And she, bringing out the positive stories through Grand Rapids Magazine, the fun things, the good things, because quite frankly, for every negative thing in our society, there are thousands and thousands of good things. They just don't make the press. They don't make the news because they're not sexy. They don't sell. Blood sells. Sex and scare sells. It does, and it has since the dawn of time. But there are so many good things, and I like what Lisa's doing on a professional level. She's finding the good. Us as individuals who are not in the media, we need to start looking at all the great things around us because there's so many beautiful things. It really is a great exercise every day to get up in the morning or before you go to bed and write down 3 things that you noticed that day, or that you notice if you do it in the morning, which I do, 3 things at that moment that you are most grateful for. When you do that, you start noticing more of the good things. If I told you today to notice all the blue cars when you're driving home from work, you're going to see a lot of blue cars that you didn't see yesterday. They were there yesterday. You just didn't see them because your mind was focusing on them. If you focus on the good things, you notice more good things. And I'll tell you, your mental health can improve dramatically from that. And the other thing she said that I think was just so simple, but think for ourselves. All of us, we need to think for ourselves. This is not a political statement. It's not even necessarily happen to revolve around the news or the media. But overall, we get so pigeonholed so often by doing what other people think we should do, thinking the way other people tell us we should think. And in reality, you're smart. You're intelligent. You're wise. You've got some experiences that the rest of the world doesn't have. Dig into that. Trust your gut. Trust your intuition. Trust your experiences. And if you think that maybe you're right on something, do a little research. I know Lisa I'm not a huge researcher unless it's a subject I love, but she does a lot of research and she has posted a lot of things and shared a lot of things with me over the years that is so deep that it's like, I don't know where she got this information, but man, she dug, man, for this, but that's her journey and that's her profession. So I just wanted to capture that because there's some really good pieces of wisdom there for us. All right, Lisa, this question I ask every guest. You have a right to refuse it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you're okay with it, could you? Is that Arthur?
That is Arthur.
Yeah, I knew we'd hear him. All right, that's Arthur. What's he barking at?
A noise outside, probably a delivery person on the street. That's about 9 times out of 10. It's Amazon or the mailman.
He'd scare anybody away. That's for sure. That's a pretty guttural bark. That last one I heard.
Yeah, it is. It makes me feel safe having a dog in the city. That is for sure. But that's not why I have him. I have him because he's my significant other at this point.
Well, yeah, I told you on the pre-call today, my little girl is 12 and a half, and she's my dog, not my good daughter, but and she is. Mm-hmm. We were talking last night, Dawson and I and Ashley, about she's just looking old. You can see it in her eyes. She gets confused. She can't hear well. She can't smell she never could smell very well. And she's losing some of her eyesight. She just, we got her. She wasn't groomed for a year and a half. I groomed her last July and I took her in last Friday. And the lady said, she hasn't gone to anybody since me. I said, no. She goes, Brian, it's a year and a half. And she was just a ball of fur. I'm like, I know, my bad. And she goes, this is not good. I didn't realize it wasn't good for dogs. But now that she's shaved, she's really looks cute and she looks little again, but she just looks old. It's like, I know. But anyway, so this question I'm going to ask you, that's the $1 million question, Lisa, is from what you want to share, what would you like to say is the most difficult thing you've gone through in your life? And if you do share it, can you share with us how you overcame it?
Wow. I've had a lot of difficulty in my life, actually, to be honest. It's hard to pinpoint it, but, this certain period of my life, it really stands out when I was a sophomore in college, around Halloween. My mother's house burned down, and I got a call from her best friend at I think it was like October 30th, so I think it was Devil's Night. That's like a thing here in Michigan for people. In Detroit, they set fire. Never mind. It's like that's the whole thing. So my mom's house burned down. Never really sure what it was or what happened there. So that was a really terrible thing to go through. Hearing, she was hysterical. Her friend was, consoling her, but everything that all of my childhood memories, everything that was in my room was reduced to just a bunch of ash. Basically. So nothing that I had from growing up, trophies or photos, pom-poms, whatever I had in my room, stuffed animals. It was all reduced to nothing. And that was awful. And my cat died in that fire as well. I was home on Christmas break that year. And around December 17th. And here I was 18 years old, and I got in a car accident. I had a closed head injury. So not only I was, just had lost everything in a fire and was consoling a mother who had lost everything in a fire, and I was staying with, I was staying on like a friend's of the family's couch because we didn't have anywhere to live. And, I had this, I would call it almost like a near-death experience. I was knocked unconscious. I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and it was due to bad weather. The roads were ice and that kind of thing. And I spent the next several days with 2 black eyes, a closed head injury, kind of in a daze, and then I was starting to feel better, and I was watching the Rose Bowl, and which is always January 1st, right?
Right.
And got a call that my father had a heart attack. So within about from October 30th to January 1st of that year, I lost everything that I'd ever owned. My cat. I got in a car accident, almost lost my life, and then my father had a heart attack and died. So that was not one thing that I went through. That was 3 things. They say tragedies always come in threes. Well, I'm not really a superstitious person, but and in between. In there, my mom was running around town paying bills with cash, and her purse got stolen, a couple $1,000s taken out of it. So, just one horrible thing after another. And how did I come through that? What did I do to deal with it? There was a lot of, I didn't know if it was PTSD. I don't even know if that was like a phrase we knew at that time. Or if there was actual, brain damage. But as a sophomore in college, I found myself, my personality completely changed. It used to be a lot of how I am right now. Very, very gregarious, very talkative. I was, like the person today.
Mm-hmm.
I became very withdrawn and quiet and an observer for, I would say, a number of years. My brain didn't work the same. It took me a long time to be able to multitask again. I'm a multitasker. I can hear things, I can see things, I can do several things at one time, but it changed me. I couldn't. I had to do one thing at a time. I didn't do as well in school. All these things. I think the only thing that kept me going through it and was perseverance. Is you just had to keep on keeping on. And it sounds like a cliche. It sounds like a not a very good piece of advice, but keep on keeping on. You just keep going through the motions. A lot of times I wanted to get back to who I was before. The happy person, the person who could walk into a room and, talk to people and listen and not be distracted by the noise and, be able to have conversations like I used to. But it really kind of turned me from that type A person or whatever. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but that person who is always kind of talking and gregarious and has friends and laughter to the person who's quiet and observing and, the wallflower, the person who's, observing. I really got a chance to be a different kind of person than I was. And, that's.
Well, can I go back? Did you say your father passed away from the heart attack?
Yeah, he did. He had a heart attack and he lost consciousness and never recovered. He died 2 days later, January 3rd, which was my mom and dad's 31st wedding anniversary, oddly.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't think you've ever shared that with me. I don't.
No, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sorry to hear that because he was obviously such an inspiration for you growing up. But, I got to go back to something. I wonder, you said that you became less of that type A or that gregarious personality for a while and you became more of an observer. I got to wonder if that actually helped put you in the direction of now where you do the research, you've done the journalism, and that gave you that extra maybe set of eyes or that depth that you may not have had you not gone through that experience, because now you can sit back, because you are gregarious, you're outgoing, but yet at the same time you can dig into research like I've never seen anybody do. And I wonder if that becoming an observer helped you to kind of build that mental skill set, so to speak.
I mean, as I was recalling the story right now, I had that same thought, and I had never really thought about that before. But you could be right. I might have just been too busy being the person that I was, like in high school, whatever. I was a cheerleader. I was in plays. I was, I was just that person. I was all about me and and me some more. I mean, I was a self-centered teenager, like a lot of us are. And I didn't understand those people who didn't join in the conversation at all. Didn't understand them at all. Like, why is that person always just sitting there kind of like, they look like they're listening, but they're not really contributing. I didn't understand those people, and I guess now I do.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's great. I'm flipping through your Facebook as we're talking, and I want to get to a couple questions. But before I do, I want to ask you. So now, where you are now in your life, Lisa, if you could go back to that girl who was a sophomore at Michigan State University, and we were taking a time machine, we're flying back right now. You're sitting on the park bench talking to her. I'm kind of standing off to the side. What would you tell that young lady at that? What would you say is a recipe for a good life, or some advice you would give your younger self?
Wow. Take your own advice. Mm-hmm. We all have that little voice in our head that tells us what's right and wrong. We all have that thing that happens in our gut when we notice something happening, but then everybody around us either isn't noticing it or ignoring it or whatever. Take your own advice. Listen to the voice inside your head. I would tell myself that, because there are a couple times that in my life that I've ignored that voice, and it comes back to bite you in the behind. It really does. It's like, I knew that person was going to, I knew that person was going to be this way when the time came to it. I knew it, yet I just kept letting this happen. I didn't speak up. And I think I didn't speak up because I was still in that observation mode. I was still that person being like, okay, I don't know. I just couldn't find the words. The words would get stuck somewhere between me thinking them and then them coming out of my mouth. And, I've let people walk over me. I have, like, for many years. Maybe that's why I was able to take it in LA for so long, because I just let them. I let them do the thing where they take credit for something I did or whatever. And because a lot of Hollywood is the loudest voice gets the prize, basically.
And I'm going to say something to you. That observer is still in you, and I just thought of this as you were saying this, telling your story, because I remember a few times when we're sitting there talking, and I don't know if it's your eyes are pretty piercing. And I remember thinking, and I don't get uncomfortable around people very often. I don't really get nervous or anxious, but a few times I'm thinking, man, looks like she's digging into my soul right now. Like everything I'm saying, it's like she's looking at it. I didn't use the thought observing, but it was like, man, she's really dissecting. And that's probably what I noticed, is that observer in you is really observing little nuances that most people they go right over their head. So I think you still have a lot of observer in you. I have a question for you. You just mentioned Hollywood. I was going through your pictures here as we're flipping through some of your photos, and you got a picture of you and Danny Huston and Peter Weller. For most of you know who Peter Weller is. He was RoboCop in the original RoboCop 80s films. What was it like for you growing up in a small community in Michigan, a rural community, as you said, and then rubbing elbows with movie stars and being part of the process of producing, co-writing, and being, an actress yourself in many of these films? What was that? What is that? What do you think when you're a small town Michigan girl and you're out there doing that? Can you give a little bit of a bite to the Bamboo Pack, who have they just don't, it's not relative to them. They can't comprehend that.
Well, I think at that point in my life, I had left the small town girl behind a lot. We all wear masks. We all get caught up in our lives. I went to Michigan State. I was around people who weren't small town people. I kind of I kind of lived a little bit vicariously through those people. I had friends who grew up in, suburbs of major cities and were those types of people. And I learned like what their lives were like kind of growing up, because I like the best thing I could think of to do from about the age of 0 to like 8 years old was play in the sandpit. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but like I had my toys out there in my little worlds that I would make and whatever. I mean, that wasn't the case for a lot of the people. They were going to whatever dance lessons or whatever the thing was in their community, that, playing hockey if it was a guy, whatever. I didn't do any of that stuff. I had no structured play whatsoever. So, I mean, it wasn't until I got to college and like kind of learned what life was like outside the small town bubble. As far as I was concerned, 40 acres and, horses in the pasture and not being able to see cars was like really cool, like a really cool way to grow up. And I met people who thought that like anybody who grew up that way is, like marries their cousin and chews on hay all day. You know what I mean? Like I met all these people who had a very strong bias against rural people. And I learned very quickly that it wasn't cool to be the rural person. I mean, it was like, oh, if you didn't grow up in a cool suburb, and it, you're basically in the movie Deliverance or something. So,
right. Yep.
You were a character from Deliverance, or you were, the Hills Have Eyes kind of people or something. I mean, so I guess I kind of masked a lot of that. And plus it stopped. I stopped being that person. I became like a city person. I lived at Michigan State. It's the world's largest single campus university, as far as I know, or it was back then. Like 40,000 people crammed onto a couple square miles. I mean, I ceased being the small town girl. I moved to Chicago right away. I mean, I'd always loved Chicago. My dad was from Chicago. We would go there, to go shopping or to go to Cubs games. And, so I've always grown up with the love of like a real city too. So, I don't know. I didn't feel like I didn't belong around any of the Hollywood people. And like you said before, a lot of the people, they came from small towns too.
Right.
I mean, they might have left that information at the bus stop when they got off at Hollywood and Vine, but they certainly, people come from everywhere, and we're all the same underneath.
I love that. Now, ladies and gentlemen in the Bamboo Pack, you're listening to a woman here who, and sometimes I don't get starstruck by anyone. I don't have any affiliation for any particular band, musician, singer, songwriter, actress, politician. I don't really have anybody that I really Google over. Maybe a few authors or philosophers, but that's about it. But I wanted to share with you that Lisa, I think it was 2017, she completed a feature-length narrative film called State of Modern Love, which won Best Foreign Film, and Lisa won Best International Director at the Melbourne Underground Film Festival in September of 2017. So when she's talking, she's coming from a great deal of experience and wisdom and a great deal of success in a world that most of us we only know it because we watch it on film or watch it on TV or at the theater. And I love the fact that this shows so much of why we started this podcast. And Lisa's a perfect example of this. She's symbolic of this. Is no matter where you are in life, what you've accomplished, where you land, we've all gone through shit. We've all gone through terrible, terrible times. Some of us are still in terrible, terrible times. And if you're not, you're going to go through terrible, terrible times. When Lisa, when she was a sophomore at Michigan State University, her mother's house burned down. She lost her every possible material possession that held memories for her. Her cat died. She was in a car accident and had a closed head injury and really changed her personality. Then just a week or so later, a couple of weeks later, her father has a heart attack and then passed, unfortunately, on January 3rd. I mean, that's a catastrophe. And she got through it. And I just think I love what she said. It's so simple. And she even said it's probably not the best advice, but it's probably the best advice. Keep on keeping on. Because if we do that and we focus on the journey ahead of us and the next step we have to take, and we can kind of look in the rearview mirror as a lesson and look in the out the windshield as where we're going, we can really get through some difficult times. And I know a lot of you are right now. You're going through challenging times, and that's why you tune into podcasts that are talking about professional and personal development of all types of nature. And just believe that we can get through it. You can get through it. And you've got a lot of people in the Bamboo Pack who are supporting you. So thank you for that amazing piece of wisdom. So all this that you've done, Lisa, and you're still moving forward in your journey, what's a win for you in life right now? What do you consider to be a triumph or a victory?
Wow. A win is basically, I'm a mom, so anytime my kids are happy, that's a win. That's really the only thing that matters to me and has mattered since I had them, is making them happy. And it's kind of a weird thing to say. A win for me is someone else's happiness, but I that's just who I am. I want them to be happy. I want them to grow. I want them to have good relationships. And, my kids are young adults. They're 19 and 21, and things haven't been super easy for them. We moved back to Michigan with their dad, and he lasted 4 months here, and he's a Hollywood guy. He went back to LA when they were 3 and 5, and we've been here ever since, kind of trying to make our way. And it hasn't been easy. Kids growing up without a father, not easy. So a win for me is when my kids are thriving and having success. I guess personally, I guess that kind of just translates to being on good terms with your family or your loved ones or the people you consider family, the people around you. A win for me is not failing other people who depend on me, and that's it. It's just that simple. Relationships, good relationships with the people in my life who matter.
I think that's perfect. I mean, and so many people have shared with me that same a win for them, no matter who they are, where they are, what they're accomplishing in life, or what they're struggling with. A win for them is their children or grandchildren or the next generation, making sure they're stable, happy, healthy in all factions. So, thank you for that. What's next for you? What's your next step in life?
Well, my next step in life is I'm never satisfied, Brian. Like never. I'm the editor of Grand Rapids Magazine. I love it. I love Grand Rapids. I love food. We're a very food heavy publication. We like highlight restaurants and people who run restaurants, and it's not just restaurants, it's issues in the city as well. But we just focus on all these good things. I just want to create the best publication possible, I guess. There are some other things that I still have going on with Hollywood. I'm in constant talks with people about developing something. I would really like to do a series that's kind of semi-autobiographical. That's a weird word to say. Autobiographical. Autobiographical. Let me try that again. I would like to basically create a series for Hollywood, but it's far down the pike. It's nothing that's going to happen today or tomorrow or even in the next year. Those kind of things take so much time that I'm just trying to get by day by day right now. During you talked about people doing things during the pandemic that we couldn't really do before because we were too busy actually earning livings and that kind of thing. What I did during the pandemic was I put together, I digitally remastered a film that was 20 years old, and I made a documentary about it. And it really reignited my passion for what I set out to do in the first place with that film, Ivansxtc. And there's kind of a sequel to it, but I want it, instead of being like a one-off film, I'm going to try to turn that into a series. So there you go.
Oh, I love that. So can I include a link to Ivansxtc on the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not sure if it's still on Amazon Prime or if you have to order the Blu-ray, but it should be uploadable somewhere.
I'm going to upload it.
Downloadable or streaming or...
Yeah.
You know the word.
Whatever that word is. I still don't know. It's upload, download. I don't know what that means. I call everything download. I don't even know what an upload is, to be honest with you. But I think that's wonderful. I'm going to include that on here as well. I think that's wonderful. And I think, I have to be honest with you. I haven't yet watched the movie, and I've thought about it so many times. And so I'm going to make it a point that between now and the end of the year, I'm going to order it if I have to do it through Blu-ray, or I'm going to watch it if it's live streaming or if it's streaming. So that is a commitment.
Get the Blu-ray because it has my documentary on it. It's called Charlotte's Story. Charlotte was the name of my character. Okay. And I got to tell my story. What I really wanted to do with the documentary was go around and interview everybody who was in the movie. Because, it's 20 years old. It's a 20-year-old movie. It's considered a classic now, I guess. I mean, anytime a company wants to re-release a film that was released 20 years ago, I think we can safely say that's a classic, right? And Roger Ebert and Richard Roeper gave it 2 thumbs up. It was on their show when, it came out, and I'm just getting involved in shameless self-promotion.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I can send you a link to it. The documentary called Charlotte's Story is only on the Blu-ray. The other thing that's on the Blu-ray is an extended producer's cut that I made. I put 20 minutes more back into the film, which didn't really need to be there, but it kind of fleshes the film out a little bit more. There's a little bit more of my character in it, and I just did that for the fans of the film. The film has a kind of a cult following. It's a lot about the seedy underbelly of Hollywood. It shows some of that Me Too culture that was involved. And there's a scene where the Peter Weller character, Peter, is playing a megalomaniac movie star in the movie.
Okay.
And he has girls in his penthouse suite. He's having a party, and he orders one of them to go perform a sex act on somebody else in the room, and she just has to go do it because she's an actress trying to get ahead in Hollywood. So it has some of that very the visceral Hollywood underbelly stuff going on. There's a lot of cocaine use and that kind of thing that did not paint Hollywood in the most flattering light. It's like I moved to Hollywood, wrote a story about how horrible they all are, and then like the Ricky Gervais monologue at the Golden Globes a couple of years ago, basically, it said, "This is how horrible you all are. No, goodbye. I don't care."
And did you tell me that you spoke in that same, I don't know if it's an auditorium where Rick Gervais gave the really scathing opening of I think it was the Golden Globes. Did you speak there at once?
Yeah, yes. It was the 2020 Golden Globes, wasn't it? When Ricky Gervais
I think it was.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, yes, I did. I spoke there after I made my documentary for A&E Television. I think it was after the first documentary. It could have been after the second. It's the timeline is getting weird for me, but I didn't even know. People are like, "Oh, this is the Golden Globes, ballroom," and I'm like, "What? I don't care. I don't follow Hollywood. I didn't care. I moved to Hollywood not even knowing about Hollywood. I was a documentary filmmaker, and then I just got caught up in it. So I spoke about my Holocaust documentary, about taking a crew of like 5 people to Europe to interview Holocaust survivors, which I did when I was about 24, 25 years old.
That was so
that was just kind of right out of the gate. I was kicking butt and taking names, I guess.
No, that does not surprise me. I did not know that Ebert and Roeper gave you 2 thumbs up either. That's good stuff, man.
I'll send you the link to that.
Yeah, I want you to send it to me when we're done today. Yeah, I'd love to see that. There's so many things about you that I have to do a podcast. I have to start a podcast to get to know you better. I have to do 64 episodes before I can do the 65th one, so I can learn more about my friend Lisa.
Well, I committed the mortal sin of casting myself in Hollywood, and I'm like, we didn't have a big budget. I couldn't afford Drew Barrymore, and whoever it was at the time. I mean, Danny Huston was just like a friend. He wasn't a big actor at the time. He'd only been in a couple of movies with just a line here or there. And of course, he's the son of John Huston, a famous
Right.
director, and the half brother of Angelica Huston, who everybody knows. So, he had that famous name, but he wasn't famous at the time, and he's been in, I don't know, probably 60 some odd movies. I think the next movie he was in after ours, he went on to star opposite Nicole Kidman. So his star shot way up. I mean, and I was left holding the baby, for 20 years trying to get it out on like DVD. Anyway.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it. I have I've watched the preview or the trailer a couple of times, and it looks really interesting. So I didn't really, you had told me that day when we had dinner at that, I wish I could think of the name of that restaurant. It's a chicken.
Harmony Brewing?
No, the place on Wealthy.
Oh, the chicken place.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
What's the name of that place? Okay.
Hancock.
Hancock. Shout out to Hancock on the Wealthy Avenue in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah. And I remember you were talking about that day. And then so I went back and I got on my computer and watched the trailer. And I've watched it a couple of times since, and it looks fascinating. So I'm going to watch it I have a week off next week. So that'll be a good project for me, a good thing to do to get to know you a little better. So I've got one final question before I wrap up. And that is, did I miss any questions? Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wish I would have, or I should have asked, or is there any last message you want to leave to myself and the Bamboo Pack, Lisa?
Just nothing that I haven't said already. Trust your gut, people. Trust your eyes and your ears. People on TV aren't your friends. Mm-hmm. They're not even the people that they pretend to be. I mean, some of them may be very authentically themselves, and I've seen people go from being the most charismatic, wonderful, effervescent, beautiful, loving, just amazing person on screen to the minute you call cut, them turning into a monster. Mm. And you know what? That's their job. That's their job. They're actors. Even if they're telling you the news, they're an actor first. They're in the actors union. They're not your friends. And they don't care about you. They care about their paycheck. They really do. Otherwise, you don't get that job. The people who get that job care about nothing more than their paycheck. And then the ones who care about more, you know who they are. They're out there telling you. They're the people getting kicked off Twitter. They're the people, maybe not now, getting kicked off Twitter before Elon Musk took it over. You know who they are. You know the people who really are themselves because they're out there being themselves. They have Twitter accounts. They go on podcasts. They talk about things that really matter to them. And the people who are on TV telling you have to stay in your house and you can't have Thanksgiving with grandma, or else you're gonna, they're not your friends, and that's it. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be controversial, but just trust your gut, trust your eyes and your ears, and don't fail the people around you, your family. I've heard of so many people losing friends and family over this whole pandemic, and the differences in opinions about how you should go about, quarantining and all that. And let me tell you, I had COVID and I quarantined for 21 days. I did not want to give that disease to anyone else. And I care, I'm not denying COVID. I'm just saying, like, if you're well and it's Christmas, go see your grandma. It might be the last time. Right. I had a brother die this year. We chose as a family to see each other over the past couple of years because, tomorrow isn't promised for anyone.
I couldn't agree more. When you were talking, the thing that stood out the most is when you talked about I'm going to say the celebrities, the news reporters and media heads that do tell the truth, or do at least they're themselves. They don't fall into the collective norm or the collective diatribe. They spoke what they believed to be the truth. They actually were the authentic selves, but they were ostracized by the same people who would say you shouldn't ostracize anybody for being themselves. Everybody should be able to be their unique selves. They should be able to live the life they choose and live the life they want, which I agree with. But yet those were some of the people they were the first ones to ostracize. and, almost demonize the people who actually spoke their truth and said, this is what I'm seeing. This is my reality. This is what you're not being told. So, there's a lot of lessons in that. And without getting into politics, and I know how you feel, you and I are pretty much both moderates, and see both sides of the equation, but we can definitely, sometimes when you sit right in the middle a little bit, you look around, you can see both sides. You see the good, the bad, and the crazy of both sides. And that's why I trust your judgment so well. So I want to...
thank you. And it just all comes down to hypocrisy is never a good thing, It's like my body, my choice. Okay, my body, my choice then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think...
no matter what.
Yeah, you're right. And when you said hypocrisy is not you're right. Hypocrisy is a really bad strategy to carry through life, because when you do that, you really can't live your authentic self. I mean, when you're just being told every day what to believe, and you only focus on work and talk with people or tune into media that substantiates what you believe, it's an echo chamber, and confirmation bias takes over. And again, that's what I've noticed in the people that I know in my life are the people who didn't ever look at other sides. They didn't look at the other half of the truth. They stuck with their own narrative. They talked and hung out with people who speak their narrative. They only watch media that substantiate their narrative. And they just went down it was a slippery slope, and they just went down it rapidly. And now they're so far gone that they can't think outside this microscopic little comfort zone they have. And I'm not angry at those people. I have many people who I've loved all my life who fell into that category that I have really nothing to do with anymore because of their toxicity. And I still love them, but I just have so much pity for them because of the pain and torture they must be going through in their minds, because they went down that slippery slope. And so I think the best thing you said today was, and it was such a simple thing, was take your own advice. And I would add, take your own damn advice with an exclamation point on that. So I just want to recap a few things that Lisa said. I'm probably going to recap some things I've already recapped. But again, I have a page of notes here, so it's hard to go through them. Acknowledgement of talent builds confidence. So get out there and acknowledge that even the smallest amount of talent and skill and unique skill set you see in somebody, let them know. Give them a little kudos, attaboy, attagirl. It can build an incredible, it can be a gift that just starts to grow incrementally, then eventually, like the Chinese bamboo seed, it just at one point explodes and grows exponentially. And another thing, I loved all the stuff she went through as a sophomore at Michigan State University, and all that, I'm going to say 3-week time period, 2-week time period, she lost so much. And her advice is keep on keeping on, man. Perseverance is key, and it isn't everything. Like she became an observer. And I think sometimes so many of us have to do that in our lives. We have to become an observer, almost pull ourselves out of our life and look at our lives as if it's a movie, and you are the star. And look at the plot, look at the other characters in the movie, and say, how would you want that star to act and behave? And go back down and behave that way. I think that's powerful. Take your own advice. Listen to your own, that voice inside your head. She's never satisfied. She wants to create the best publication possible. And one thing about her is that Lisa just keeps on keeping on. And I love the stuff she's going through in her life, has gone through, and the things she's accomplished and done. This is one of my favorite podcasts. It really is. And it's probably because I'm talking to such a dear friend at the same time, but I didn't know so many of these things. So I'm learning as the Bamboo Pack is. Trust your gut, your eyes and your ears. People on TV are not your friend. They're oftentimes not who they portray to be. And don't fail the loved ones around you because of what somebody on an idiot box said at one time and then repeated it 1,000 times. So I think this was an amazing story that you shared, Lisa. I think the wisdom you shared even blew me away, and I thought I knew a lot about you. So I just want to say that I can't thank you enough for being such an amazing and inspiring guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
I can't thank you enough. It's just always fun to talk to a friend, and it always makes me feel good to share my story, because life is full of dark moments, and the thing about the dark moments is they pass. Mm-hmm. They always pass, and there will be, the sun will shine again. It will be summer again. It will be your time again. You just have to keep on keeping on.
And you say that as we are experienced today or yesterday was the darkest, shortest day in the state of Michigan. As far as so I couldn't agree with you more. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes after, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Wonderful. All right, Bamboo Pack, please take and listen to this podcast again. If you were driving, running, walking, hiking, walking around your office, cleaning your house while you listen to it, sit down and listen to it when you have a pen and paper in hand. Because one of the things I've learned in the past 60-some episodes is something I did not expect, is I have more wisdom. I have probably gained more wisdom this year than I have in the past 10 or 15 years combined. And it's because of the guests like Lisa that I bring on here that share so many things that I never thought of. A perspective, of a paradigm that shifted in me, a perspective they shared that really got me to think on a whole different level. But you have to document this stuff. You got to write it down so you can actually internalize it. You can come back later. You can articulate it. You can look back later when you're struggling and say, wow, I remember when Brian interviewed Lisa Enos and the struggles she went through and the things she's gone through and the experience and the wisdom she shared. So please do so. In the meantime, Bamboo Pack, we'll be back in the next few days. Until then, get out there and sculpt your life. Sculpt it so damn deeply that you change the world. Get out there, strive for your best, show love and respect to others, and please, by all means, live consciously. I appreciate you all. Until next time.